The snow fell in geometric patterns across the obsidian streets of Thresh 9, each flake a perfect hexagon of frozen methane that caught the violet light of the dying sun. Adam pulled his thermal coat tighter, though he knew it made little difference. The cold here wasn't just atmospheric, it was existential, seeping into the bones of every human foolish enough to call this place home. His workshop stood at the edge of the refugee quarter, a ramshackle structure cobbled together from salvaged hull plating and prayer. The sign above the door read Adam's Mechanisms in 3 languages, Standard, Thresh native glyphs, and the flowing script of the Draconic Concordat. Not that the latter mattered much anymore. The Concordat had fallen 6 cycles ago, torn apart by the Harvesters in a war that had lasted 3 brutal years. Adam was locking up for the night when he saw her. She was small, even for a juvenile Draconic. Her scales, what should have been iridescent plates of crimson and gold, were dull, flacking at the edges where malnutrition had set in. The membrane wings folded against her back trembled, not from cold alone but from the deep cellular chill that came when a Draconic's internal furnace began to fail. Her eyes, those distinctive triple-pupilled eyes that could see across 17 spectrums, were fixed on him with an intensity that made him pause. "Hello," Adam said softly, crouching down to her level. "Are you lost?" The child, she couldn't have been more than 8 standard years, didn't respond immediately. Her translator implant flickered weakly at her throat, struggling with failing power cells. When she finally spoke, her voice came out in broken standard, heavily accented. "Toymaker," she said, "you make warmth." Adam's heart clenched. He knew what she meant. The refugees whispered about him, about the human who built impossible things in his workshop. They didn't understand that his toys were advanced thermodynamic engines, compression heaters, and kinetic batteries, technologies that Earth had perfected over centuries of surviving in hostile environments. To them, to species who had evolved on garden worlds with perfect climates, his creations seemed like magic. "What's your name?" Adam asked. "Elsa," she whispered. "Elsa of Crimsonwing clan, all gone now, all cold." The Draconic species were hydrogen breathers with a metabolism that burned hotter than most starship engines. They needed immense amounts of energy to survive, and in their natural state, they generated their own heat through a complex biological fusion process. But children hadn't developed that ability yet. They relied on their parents, on the communal warmth of their clans, on the heat stones of their homeworld. Elsa had none of those things. She was dying, slowly freezing from the inside out. Adam looked up and down the empty street. The smart thing would be to take her to the refugee center, to let the overworked volunteers deal with another orphan. He had his own problems, 3 overdue contracts, a workshop that was barely holding together, and the constant pressure of being one of only 47 humans on a planet of 8 million refugees. But when he looked back at Elsa, at those fatting eyes and trembling wings, he knew he couldn't walk away. "Come inside," he said, opening the door. "Let's see what we can do." The workshop was cluttered chaos, workbenches covered with half-assembled devices, shelves lined with components scavenged from a dozen different species technologies, and in the corner, Adam's pride and joy, a functioning coffee maker that ran on thermoelectric generators. The smell of machine oil and ozone filled the air. Elsa stumbled inside, her movements sluggish. Adam could see the frost forming on the inner edges of her scales. He had maybe an hour, 2 at most, before her core temperature dropped below critical. "Sit here," he said, guiding her to a stool near his primary workbench. He grabbed a thermal blanket, human-made, designed for extremophile miners, and wrapped it around her. It would help, but not enough. Adam's mind raced through possibilities. Draconic biology was complex, their energy requirements enormous. He couldn't just plug her into a standard heater. Her cellular structure needed specific wavelengths of infrared radiation, coupled with precise electromagnetic frequencies that mimicked their homeworld's unique stellar output. He didn't have the parts, he didn't have the time, he didn't have the knowledge. But he had something else, the stubborn human refusal to accept the impossible. "Elsa," he said, pulling up a holographic display, "I need you to stay awake. Can you do that for me?" She nodded weakly. Adam dove into his salvage bins, pulling out components with practiced efficiency. A Thresh-native plasma coil, a Concordat energy matrix, a human-made quantum battery that he'd been saving for an emergency. This qualified. His hands moved with the precision of a surgeon and the speed of desperation. He began assembling something that didn't exist in any database, any manual, any engineering textbook. He was designing it in real time, intuiting connections between technologies that were never meant to interface, guided by nothing more than fundamental principles and raw determination. The Concordat matrix could generate the right frequencies, but it would overload in seconds without proper regulation. The plasma coil could provide sustained energy, but its output was too chaotic. The quantum battery could smooth the flow, but linking them required bypasses that violated 3 laws of thermodynamics. Adam violated them anyway. "Humans," he muttered to himself, "we're very good at breaking rules." He worked through the night. Elsa drifted in and out of consciousness, her biological systems shutting down in sequence to preserve her core. Adam talked to her constantly, telling her stories about Earth, about a world of liquid water and oxygen atmosphere, about a species that had clawed its way up from tribal hunters to interstellar engineers through nothing but persistence and spite. "We're not the strongest," he said, soldering a connection that sparked dangerously. "We're not the smartest. We can't breathe hydrogen or see in 17 spectrums, but we're survivors, Elsa, and we don't give up on people." Dawn was breaking, Thresh 9's strange violet dawn, when Adam finally completed his device. It looked like a piece of abstract art, a sphere of crystalline matrices surrounded by spinning plasma coils, all powered by the humming quantum core. It pulsed with warmth, real warmth, the kind that seeped into cells and rekindled dying fires. He placed it in Elsa's hands. The effect was immediate. Color flooded back into her scales, the frost evaporating in seconds. Her eyes brightened, all 3 pupils dilating with relief. The device, Adam's impossible creation, was generating not just heat but the specific energetic signature that draconic biology required. It was a miniature star, held together by human engineering and sheer stubbornness. Elsa looked up at him, her translator finally functioning properly. "You made a son," she said in wonder. Adam smiled, exhausted. "Just a small one. It'll keep you warm until we can find your clan's survivors or get you to a proper draconic settlement." But even as he said it, he knew the truth. There were no clan survivors. There would be no proper settlement, not for years. The war had scattered the draconic people across 1,000 worlds, and Thresh 9 was as good as it got for refugees. Elsa seemed to understand too. She looked at the device in her hands, then at Adam. "Why?" she asked. "Humans and draconics we never allied, never traded. Why help me?" Adam was quiet for a moment, thinking about humanity's long, brutal history, about the wars they'd fought and the mistakes they'd made, about the billions of times they'd failed to help when they should have, but also about the times they had helped when it made no sense, when there was no benefit, when it was just the right thing to do. "Because you were cold," he said simply, "and I could make you warm." Word spread quickly through the refugee quarter. The human Toymaker who had saved a dragon child. Other draconic juveniles began appearing at his door, each one shivering, each one dying. Adam made more devices, refining the design, teaching other engineers the principles. The technology became known as Adam's furnaces, though Adam himself called them stubborn bastards, because they shouldn't work according to any known physics. But they did work, because sometimes human engineering was less about elegant equations and more about refusing to accept that something couldn't be done. Elsa never left his workshop. She became his assistant, her three-spectrum vision perfect for precision work. Together, they built warmth where there had been only cold, creating light in the darkness of a refugee world. And years later, when the draconic Concordat finally rebuilt itself, and historians asked Elsa how humanity had earned the eternal friendship of her people, she always gave the same answer. A human gave me the sun when I needed it most, not because he had to, not because it benefited him, but because that's what humans do. They see someone suffering and they make something impossible to help. That's their real strength, not their technology, their refusal to look away. And